Welcome again to today's Student Success Workshop on tackling test intimidation with strategy. As I mentioned before, my name is Stephanie. I'm an academic success coach. And before we dive in completely to today's topic, I always like to start our student success workshops off with telling you a little bit about the Office of Retention and Student Success Initiatives, which is actually where my team and I are. So this is our office, and we do some really great things. A lot of really great resources and support are available for you as a student through our office. So we're just going to go over that before we get started. Now, with the Office of Retention and Student Success Initiatives, we like to let you know about these things at all points in the semester because you never really know when you'll need these resources. And as we start approaching the middle of the semester, we want to make sure that you feel supported and you kind of get through to the second part of the semester strong. So as our office, we do have a mission. It's listed on the screen there. We just really want to make sure that you as a student have everything that you need to be successful both inside and outside of the classroom. So what are some ways that we do that? So academic success coaches like myself and my team, which you'll see here in a second, you can meet one-on-one with an academic success coach as a student to go over a variety of topics. So maybe you're struggling with study strategies. Maybe you got a bad grade on an exam and you want to do better in the course. Maybe it's time management that you're struggling with. We sit down with you and we go over academic success plans, and we can also connect you to resources that can help you on campus. Student success workshops obviously are another part of our office that we host, so you can always attend a student success workshop throughout the academic year. And then academic outreach as well. So you might have an instructor in one of your courses who sees a need in their class, and they might reach out to us and say, hey, we see that this student actually is struggling in this area. Can you reach out to them? And then we will. Or can you come into our class, to my class, and talk about time management, talk about your office and everything that you're doing. So that's another aspect of our office, as well as that academic outreach. So definitely not an exhaustive list, but something that you want to keep in mind. So how can we help? Taking it one step further, just some questions we have here that students have asked themselves in the past. Maybe some of these look familiar to you as you navigate your college journey. So again, if you've ever asked yourself any of these questions or anything similar, maybe consider meeting with an academic success coach like myself and my team. Speaking of my team, here we are. So we are all academic success coaches. We all exist here on campus to be your support system, a safety net for you. Jamie is our director. So, and then Ashley, if you're in a learning community, you will likely meet with her if you don't recognize her from that picture there. Corinne works with our students who are on academic probation. But we all can meet with any student on campus. So if you are interested in meeting with an academic success coach, please take a picture of this slide, screenshot it, whatever works for you. The best and easiest way to schedule an individual appointment with one of us is online through OnCourse. OnCourse actually syncs up our calendar availability with your class and personal availability through the OSU system, so that you can find a time that you're not in class and you don't have other commitments going on that works for you. Just wanted to throw out there that we do offer virtual and in-person appointments, so we are very flexible. And then if you ever have any questions before meeting with an academic success coach, please feel free to give us a call or email us. Our contact information is on here as well. So just wanted to make sure you are well equipped to utilize this resource. I also have the QR code up here so that if you want to check out our website and all of the things that we have to offer students, we have really great online resources there as well for you. So definitely feel free to scan that, check us out later. But just want to make sure that you are able to take advantage of our office, because we're there for you. And we're really just waiting to help students in any way that we can on any given day. Again, just to reiterate our contact information so you have it. And then I wanted to end this portion of the workshop by letting you know that all of our offices for retention and student success are located on the second floor of the Warner Center, which is where we are located right now. Next year, if you are staying on campus for another year, you're not campus changing. We're actually going to be located in the brand newly renovated building, Hodges Hall, which is just right across campus. And we'll have an actual like office and hub that will all be located in. So just wanted to let you know about that. Hopefully that was very helpful for you just to know like, hey, these are the resources that we offer. And if you ever need them, they're here for you. All right, so now let's tackle the subject of the day, which is probably why you attended today's student success workshop. Test intimidation, right? How can we overcome our test scaries, our test anxiety? What are some strategies that we can use when it comes to preparing for a midterm, for a final? And how can we, continue to use those strategies so that we're not going into an exam and freaking out and forgetting everything, right? So we're going to talk today a little bit about tackling all of that with some strategy. So I hosted a student success workshop last week, it was, on study strategies preparing for midterms. So if you attended that workshop, some of this will look familiar to you. We talked a lot about different study strategies for different classes that you can try. We talked about how to, best study for yourself and how you learn best. So some of this is going to look a little familiar if you attended that workshop. But one of the ways that you can tackle, hi, are you here for the workshop? Yeah. Okay, you can take a seat wherever. One of the ways that you can tackle test intimidation with some strategy is just by learning about the exam, right? So before the exam, we want to talk about before, after, what you can do during to help with your test anxiety. So before the exam, you really want to know your priorities, which means that you want to learn about the exam, you want to learn about yourself, and you want to learn about resources that you can use to help you prepare for the exam. So let's break those down a little bit. How do you learn about the exam, right? It might be a little weird for you. You might be like, what does that even mean? So you really want to know, how are you going to be tested, right? So thinking about, is it going to be matching? Is it going to be fill in the blank, multiple choice? Is there going to be an essay that you have to prepare for beforehand? All of that is important, right? Because usually before an exam, if I knew that there was going to be multiple choice options, it made me feel a little better that I was going to have options in front of me that I could kind of do process of elimination with versus putting in a short answer, right? That sort of, one, helped with my test anxiety for that exam, but then it also helped me know how I needed to study. So you can learn about the exam in a couple different ways. You can straight up just ask your instructor, hey, what can we expect question-wise with this exam? You can also look at old quizzes, old exams. A lot of our instructors want to work smarter, not harder. So you might see some of those questions pop up on larger exams later, like midterms and finals. So that's just a couple different ways that you can learn about how you're going to be tested. And then what questions are you going to be asked? Is it going to be knowledge-based? Is it going to be analysis? Are you going to have to apply certain concepts or key points to specific scenarios? Is it going to be, a lot of reading? Is there going to be a lot of writing? So learning about those things can help you kind of be like, okay, this is what I feel good about. This is what's stressing me out a little bit. And this is how I can plan and prepare for both, right? So learning about the exam is key. Learning about yourself, that second piece, is also really important because you want to know, how do you learn best? So this is where I'm going to ask for some participation. So think about, what learning strategies do you like best, right? What type of study activities have captured your attention in the past? Which ones do you use now? And do you have variety in your study method? So I'm going to give you a minute or two to think about this. For those of you tuning in virtually, just utilize the chat for this portion. But tell me, what learning strategies do you like? What type of study activities capture your attention? And do you have a variety in your study method? So tell me a little bit about how you learn and how you like to study. And I'll give you guys a couple seconds. Okay, I'm gonna pick on you. And don't be shy, because I haven't seen anything come through the chat yet. But what type of learning strategies do you like best? Like, how do you study? What works for you? What has worked for you? Quiet area. Okay, so you're not like background noise type of person. Okay, I was the same way. Do you find that you study for different classes differently, or do you have similar study strategies across your schedule?
Well, it's like a class where I'm reading a lot, then I probably won't study music. Like, usually I listen to music while I'm like doing things like that, writing stuff.
Okay, cool. Do you like listen to music with lyrics, or like is it more instrumental? Okay, cool. All right, so we had a couple good points here. So studying in a quiet area works for you. But on the flip side, if there's a lot of reading, or maybe you're doing math problems, having some music in the background helps you focus, concentrate, and do the work better. So you know that if you have a math exam coming up and you're going to be studying for it, working out problems, that you're probably going to want to have that playlist ready so that you can focus, versus like going somewhere quiet, having your noise canceling headphones and just trying to focus, right? So learning about yourself is really important, because if it is a math exam, you're going to study for that probably differently than if it's like a science exam or if it's an English exam, right? So there's going to be some variety there. So learning about what works for you. If it's your first semester in college, it might be hard for you to do that, just because there's a lot of different, the transition is big. There's a lot of differences between high school and college learning and teaching. So thinking about those things, but if you're in your second year or even your second semester, hopefully you've learned some of that already, and then you can apply those to upcoming exams or assignments that you might have, right? So learning about yourself is equally just as important as learning about the exam, because then you know how you're going to approach studying for the exam and the specific subject that's coming up, and you can plan for that. And then learning about resources. So this is kind of like the triple threat, right? It's the exam, yourself, and resources. Resources are important because there are a lot on campus that you can use that can help you study and stay focused before an exam, right? And kind of the more you prepare, which we'll go over in a second, the less anxious you're going to be about an exam. So these are just some resources that we have on campus, obviously not an exhaustive list, that can help you when it comes to preparing for an exam. So academic coaching. I'm an academic success coach. We talked about the Office of Retention and Student Success, my team, earlier, and you can meet with one of us to kind of go over study strategies. We have the tutoring center. That's huge. You can go there, be tutored by a peer in pretty much any subject that they offer. The tutoring center also encompasses the math learning center and the writer studio. So if you need help writing a paper, reading comprehension, if you need help with math, you can go there. Review sessions and study groups. Some instructors will offer like review sessions before an exam at a certain location on campus. So considering going to those if you can, especially if you know that it's an exam that you need to do well on or you're a little bit more nervous about. Study groups is big. I was never somebody who did well in study groups, but sometimes it was helpful for me to have someone there so that if I came across something I didn't understand, I could just ask somebody else who was in my class, right? Office hours, this is huge and can also come with experience. We talked about it being your first semester versus your second year, those types of things. Your instructors have office hours usually for most of your classes, and they're just sitting in their office waiting for you to come and ask them questions. So if they offer that, which they will usually put on their syllabus, use that time. If there's an exam, especially with midterms or finals coming up, and you want to know like, hey, how can I best prepare for this? You can go in and you can sit down and you can be like, hey, can you go over this last exam with me? Can you go over this quiz with me? Because here are the questions that I'm still not really understanding. And they will hopefully do that with you, and hopefully that will be productive. And if you leave the office hours and you're still kind of like, I don't know, you can go to the tutoring center and chat with a tutor about that, right? The library, which is where we are right now, is a great resource. They have study rooms here. They have resources and staff that can help you if you ever need anything to loan out, like calculators, laptop chargers. They have those things to loan out here. So I just want to know if you guys, any of you, have utilized any of these resources on campus already. Yeah, Math Learning Center.
Animals, it's like English, writers.
Oh, cool. Okay, was it helpful?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And if you guys want to share online any of these resources or others that you've used, feel free to do that too. But just know that there are a lot of resources that can help you, right? So now that we've kind of learned about this whole triple punch, right? The exam, ourselves, and resources. Now we can talk a little bit more about what to do and what not to do when it comes to prepping for an exam. And prepping is just going to help you be less stressed about the exam because it's the biggest combatant to test anxiety. So these might seem a little obvious to you, but there are a lot of students who kind of just read this and still do some of the don'ts and don't do some of the do's. So you really want to think about getting a good night's sleep, right? Sleep is huge when it comes to anything in life. We're not functioning correctly or performing properly if we don't get enough sleep. So whatever that means to you, usually recommended is like 7 to 8 hours, 8 to 9, whatever. But whatever that means to you to get a good night's sleep, make sure you're doing that before an exam. If you're stressed about the exam, do some things to expel that stress. It could be working out. It could be going on a walk. It could be, other ways that you relieve stress. Some people like to play video games. So make sure that you are filling your own cup and de-stressing on your own time before an exam so that you're not just holding up all that energy before it. Fueling your body properly is really big too. Not everybody is a breakfast person, but thinking about how you can properly fuel your body before an exam so that you're not going in on an empty stomach, because that can affect your performance negatively as well. This could be good if you listen to music, but creating a pre-exam playlist that you can listen to that kind of gets you either focused or hyped up. If you were an athlete at all beforehand in high school or anything, maybe you can relate to this a little bit. There were songs that might pump you up, songs that might help you relax. You can do the same thing before an exam. Sit where you don't have visual distractions. This is really big. So find a spot in the classroom where you'll be taking the exam that you're not going to be too all over the place, just so you can spend that time focusing on the exam itself. And then plan a reward for after the exam. I don't know if anyone's thought about doing this before, but we talk a lot about reward systems as academic success coaches with students. So thinking about, how can you reward yourself? Because now the exam's over, you studied really hard for it, maybe you were really stressed about it, and now it's done. So maybe thinking about things that you love to do that relax you, that you can reward yourself with after, and penciling that time in to your schedule, your planner, whatever you might use, so that you hold yourself accountable to take care of yourself after the exam is over. And then you can actually look forward to the exam being over because you're like, okay, I know that I have this planned and I'm excited about it. The don'ts, obviously, this goes hand in hand with choosing sleep over cramming. Do not pull an all-nighter. Sleep, again, is only going to help you in your performance when it comes to anything in life. So you don't want to slack off in that area. Having extra caffeine could also have negative effects just because caffeine is a stimulant. So it could, if you're already stressed and nervous about an exam, it could just make you physiologically feel like you're even more stressed and short of breath. Not everybody is a breakfast person, so skip breakfast is kind of, dependent on the person, but just making sure that you're not fueling your body before an exam. Studying right before the exam, you don't want to be sitting there kind of like reviewing things in a rush, because then you're kind of over cramming your brain. And sometimes students do that. They sit down and they forget everything that they looked over. So try not to study right before you go into that exam, right? And then don't keep track of others' timing and behavior. One thing I did a lot as a student was kind of like see when someone would leave the room and be done with an exam. And I'd be like, oh my gosh, like I'm still here. That's okay. Like you have an hour, you have 45 minutes, whatever length it is of the normal course or the normal class, you have that same amount of time usually to take the exam. So even if somebody's done way before you, it's okay if you're the last one in the room, as long as you're taking the time that you need to finish the exam fully. So just some things to think about. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about test anxiety because that's why we're here, right? And what we've already talked about really helps combat test anxiety altogether, but we want to understand what it is and maybe like why we have test anxiety, right? So test anxiety, obviously negative emotions and beliefs when it comes to your ability or your performance when it comes to academics, such as an exam, right? Midterms may be coming up, and then we have finals later on in April. So you might be really nervous about an exam or before an exam. You might get really frustrated when you're preparing for an exam, feeling like, oh, I'm not going to do well. Like, I don't understand this. This is really frustrating for me. Drawing blanks is another sign of test anxiety, right? You might feel really prepared, but then you sit down and you take a look at the exam and you're like, I know the answer to this, but I can't remember it. And then negative self-talk can kind of spiral into that, right? Basically just doubting yourself, even though you might have prepared or maybe you didn't, and just saying, I don't know this. I'm not going to do well. So some causes of test anxiety, a little bit straightforward. Prior negative experience with an exam or with an instructor, that can cause some test anxiety, right? You're already going in expecting this experience to be the same as your last. Poor preparation. Preparation is key to combating test anxiety. And that's kind of what we talked about just now, right? Learning about the exam, learning about yourself, learning about resources. Lack of self-confidence. I mean, we all, to a degree, struggle with that. And then there also might be some biological or neurological barriers that you don't have control over. If you are established, maybe you have accommodations and you are established with our Office of Disability Services, that's awesome. But if you have accommodations and you're not using them, then you might want to think about using them and getting connected with disability services, because that's only going to help you and maybe even get rid of some of that test anxiety, because sometimes students' accommodations will consist of getting more time on a test in a certain environment. So thinking about that as well. So coping strategies. So how do you cope with test anxiety, right? It seems like something that you can't really do much about. It's going to be there anyway. Well, I can tell you that there are some things that you can think about doing, and we've already discussed some of them when it comes to preparing for the exam. But there are some other things, even if you've prepared for the exam, that doesn't mean that you're still not going to be nervous. So some other things that we can think about to tackle test intimidation or test anxiety. Of course, being prepared. The more you prepare, the more you study, the more you ask questions, get help, use resources beforehand is only going to help you feel more in control of the outcome. Keeping a positive attitude. So trying to practice some positive self-talk, especially as you make time to study, make time to remind yourself that, you got this, you're preparing, you're in control of the situation. And just giving yourself that grace is really important. And then relaxing. So meditation and breath work is really important when it comes to just physiologically relaxing your body. I actually have one resource that I wanted to share with you guys, and this is something that online, it's available for pretty much anyone, but it's through your Plan for Health, which is one of the resources that's available to faculty, staff, and students. But thinking about breathing techniques, right? Because, you usually hear like breathe in for 5 seconds, hold it for 3, and then breathe out for 5 more. Well, sometimes you're like, I don't really know how to do that. So this is actually a breathing exercise that is offered online through Ohio State's Your Plan for Health that you can just follow along. So really you're just trying to sync your breathing with this specific image. And then if you ever want to use that or you find that helpful, then it kind of explains the breath work and the breathing exercise for you. This is just one of many resources that you can go to when you're preparing for those exams and trying to help with your test anxiety. But there are a couple more videos that I'll show later as well. But I wanted to share this with you because there are even more breathing techniques that are shared through this website too. And I'll make sure to put this specific link in the chat, and I can share this with you guys in person as well. Okay. Really quick. So that's one resource. But really thinking about how to relax your body and just making sure that the same way that you are making time to study each day before an exam, you're also making time to relax and maybe do some breathing exercises and take care of yourself prior to the exam too. Okay, so we'll jump back to some of those exercises and relaxation techniques that you can use before an exam, but we want to kind of talk about when you're in the exam, what is one way that you can also combat any anxiety and kind of tackle and approach the exam when you're actually sitting in the classroom and you have it in front of you, right? So what you're going to want to do is first, you're going to want to review the entire exam, right? So you're going to look over it. You're going to want to make sure you take time to read the directions carefully and fully all the way through. There might be some directions that are at the end of a paragraph or the end of a sentence that are very important to your performance and you don't want to miss out on. Gain an understanding of the type of questions. Sometimes your instructor will organize the test in a certain way where it's like all the multiple choice questions are first, and then we go into true and false, and then we go into an essay. So kind of taking a look over the entire exam to see like, okay, how is this formatted? Maybe plan some sort of, plan of attack when it comes to looking over the entire exam. Taking a look at how long the exam is, right? And kind of planning in your head, okay, I know that it's 3 pages. I'm confident that I can get that done in 50 minutes, right? As long as I plan my time well. Again, approximate timing needed to complete each section. Maybe you know that multiple choice isn't going to take you as long. True and false might take you a little longer than that. And then your essay is going to take you a second to write. So you kind of start planning in your head, okay, how do I want to tackle this with some strategy? And then usually, sometimes your instructor will put how much each question is worth or how much each section is worth. So kind of thinking like, okay, what's the point distribution for each section of the test? I used to circle questions that I wasn't sure of the answer to right away and then come back to them. That was my strategy because I didn't want to sit there and wait and try to figure out one question when I knew I had a whole chunk of the exam left. So you can do things that way. And then the ones that I wasn't sure of, if I was like, okay, I don't think I got that right, I would look at how many points that was worth and be like, okay, I know that if I get that one wrong, it's 3 points off the exam. So thinking about things that way. You can actually, at the top of your exam, write down any acronyms, pseudonyms that you've made up for yourself to help you remember certain things that you know you're going to be tested on, any important formulas, if it's science or math. Definitions, keywords, put those at the top of the test so that if you need them, you can refer back to them without having to like mentally remember them, right? They're already in front of you. Of course, go through the test and complete questions that you can easily answer first, which is what I just talked about, or have a good understanding on. Maybe circle the ones you're not sure of right away and then go back to those later. And then once you're completely through the exam for the first time, go back, work through those questions that you weren't sure of or would take you a little bit more time, and then prioritize those questions. Maybe look back over the questions that are worth the most points to make sure that you feel confident about your answer in those too. So this is just one way for you to kind of tackle an exam with some strategy, right? Instead of just sitting there and being like, okay, I'm just going to go through the whole thing. There are some different ways that you can think about how to strategize when you're actually going to take the exam and you have it in front of you. So if you want to take a picture of this, if you want to screenshot it, I think that could be helpful for later. I know some courses do offer like open note exams. So those sound great because you do have your notes at your disposal, but thinking about how you want to organize those notes too, because you don't just want to have your notes and not know where keywords are, and then you're taking a lot of the exam time trying to find what you need versus making one sheet of paper with all of the important keywords, formulas, information, concepts that you'll need that you know you're going to be asked about on the exam. Okay, so just some different ways to think about different questions you might get on an exam. So multiple choice questions, you do want to try to answer the questions first without looking at the choices. Because then if you kind of cover the choices and you ask yourself the question, you're like, I know the answer to that. And then you look for the one that has that answer, then you're not spending time reading through every option and confusing yourself potentially even more, right? If you do read through the options, because you don't know the answer right away, just make sure to look at one option at a time and maybe treat each answer as a true and false question. because sometimes it's like A and B or C and D. So thinking about that can help you do process of elimination. Read all choices before settling on one, because it might get confusing and you want to make sure that you feel confident in your answer. And then all of the above or none of the above is often the correct choice. So thinking about that, but not always. So just some plans of attack when it comes to multiple choice questions. Essay questions. So if you know that there's going to be an essay on an exam, there are ways for you to prepare for that prior, right? You might not know the prompt, but maybe you know a little bit about what it's going to be about, what it's going to ask you. So when you have that essay question in front of you, you want to examine the question and organize your thoughts before you start to write. So maybe create an outline, right, with the strong beginning, your meat and potatoes middle, and then a conclusion. Outline your remaining thoughts for possible partial credit, and then you're going to want to proofread your answers and check your grammar after you've written your essay out, just to make sure it all looks good. So really with your essay, you just want to think about kind of how you would write a paper. You just want maybe 3 paragraphs, right? 4 to 6 sentences each. You want a beginning. What are you going to talk about in that middle? What's your argument? And then how are you going to conclude that? Outline it, read it over, make sure it sounds good. And then if you have any other thoughts that you think could help your argument or give you partial credit, you can add those to that too. So just another way to think about essay questions. Okay, so strategizing some more. So there are 4 stages when we think about prepping for an exam. We want to identify what you need to learn. You want to condense it, organize it, and then write it out. So let's kind of go over that. Review strategies. So, oh, sorry, I didn't have another slide to analyze that. So really, when you're preparing for an exam, you want to, again, identify what you need to learn, how you're going to be tested, maybe talk to your instructor about what are some of those key concepts that are going to be covered on the exam. Condense the information. So thinking about how you can turn, this big mountain of work when it comes to studying for an exam into smaller chunks, and maybe give yourself a couple weeks before an exam to start studying it. What information do you need to know? Giving your time to go to the tutoring center, to visit your instructor's office hours, to answer questions that you have. And then if you are a big pen to paper person, maybe you start writing out, any charts or diagrams or things like that that will help you study. We went over some of those different ways to study, like outlining, mapping, charting, those types of things in last week's workshop. But that's something that you can think about too, because if you're a visual person, it could help you understand concepts a little bit more to write those things out. Okay, so reviewing, once you have all that information, it's prepped, you're ready to study. You want to think about how you can study that information, right? Reciting, there's a lot of power in that. So saying things out loud. Sometimes when I would study on my own, I would just kind of talk out loud. Maybe after I studied, I would go with a family member or a friend and be like, hey, can you listen to this really quick? I want to explain it to you so I can make sure that I'm understanding it fully. Self-test yourself, practice so that you can make sure you're monitoring your understanding on different topics. Making sure that you're elaborating on points, and just, again, utilizing those resources. So if you're identifying problem areas while you're studying and reviewing information along the way, making sure you're taking those to class, taking those to review sessions, taking those to the tutoring center, so that you're not just not understanding those concepts, but you're trying to actually understand those better so that you can apply them in an exam format or a scenario that might be presented on an exam later. Okay, so I do have a couple of other resources I wanted to share with you, jumping back to kind of that relaxation mode when we think about coping before an exam. So these are exercises that the cool thing about them is that you can use them before an exam to relax, but there's nothing that you really need in order to use them. So even if during the exam you're having like a moment where you're spiraling, you can always use these during an exam as well, as long as you remember them. So let's take a quick second and watch these videos. So this is the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 method. Again, can be used during the exam as well.
The 5-4-3-2-1 method is a grounding exercise that can help you stay in the moment and avoid negative thinking and worry. You can do this exercise anywhere, at home, at school, in the car, or even in the middle of a crowd. You can do it sitting, standing, or laying down. Counting down to 5. Use your senses to list things around you. Make an effort to notice details about these things. This is how to do it. Start by breathing deeply into your nose and out through your mouth. Then slowly look at your surroundings. Find 5 things that you can see around you. Maybe you see a colorful poster on the wall, the spider web on the bookshelf, the lamp on the nightstand, the red shade, the cat sleeping peacefully on the chair, the cactus on the dresser that's finally blown. There was 4 things that you could touch. The warm mug in your hand, soft comfort on the bed, the demo of your jeans, the scratchy carpet under your feet. Next, listen for 3 things you can hear. Maybe the ticking of a clock.
Okay, so in the spirit of time, I'm not gonna play the whole video, but you sort of get the gist, right? So the whole point of this specific exercise is actually just so when you start getting those negative thoughts or that anxiety, you're shifting your thoughts somewhere else, right? To other things that are happening around you, without going off into the abyss with it, which is why we have the 5 different senses. So that you stop thinking so much about what you're stressed about, and then hopefully it starts calming you down and bringing you back to what you're really focusing on, right? So again, you can try this in an exam, during an exam, before an exam, after an exam to help you relax. So that's the beauty of this specific exercise. And then there's one other exercise that I wanted to share with you, that you guys, there we go, that you guys might have heard about already, but this is box breathing. I think we can play this whole video because it's only a couple minutes.
Times when we all experience feelings of stress or anxiety. In these moments, you can use your breath, how calm those feelings. Box breathing is a simple relaxation technique that can help you reset your breath and return to its normal rhythm. You can do it anywhere, anytime. Box breathing can help reduce stress and improve mood. It can also help with controlling and managing emotions. Very easy to learn. Imagine breathing around the box. Inhale as you visualize going up one side of the box, gradually filling your lungs with air. When you reach the top, hold your breath for 1 to 5 seconds as you picture going across the top of the box. Exhale gradually as you imagine traveling down the other side of the box. Pause again for 1 to 5 seconds as you go along the bottom of the box. Then repeat. This can be done 7 to 10 times in a row, focusing on the breath. If you can do it sitting down with your feet grounded, that will help too. But really, it can be done anywhere. Box breathing has physiological and psychological benefits. Physiologically, it regulates breath, increases oxygen to the lungs, and can help reduce blood pressure and lower heart rate. Box breathing can help psychologically by providing focus to your breath and removing attention from the things that are causing feelings of stress or anxiety. The repetition of box breathing can also help reduce stress. So, in moments when feelings of stress and anxiety are overwhelming, remember box breathing and the power of your breath as a simple way to relax and breathe of it.
Okay, so I think that's also a great one, again, because you can use it at any time before, during, or after an exam. And I really think that sometimes when you're told to like breathe in and breathe out and hold your breath, you just kind of get lost in it, but having that visualization of a box kind of keeps you on that specific pattern so you can do it however many times, and then actually helps you focus and relax. So just wanted to share a couple of those that maybe you can keep in your toolkit for if you ever are stressed, whether that be personally or academically or before an exam. But I know that we are just on time. It is 10:45. I did want to share this QR code so that you can scan it. We are going to have some more student success workshops coming up the end of this month and then in March and April that you can always consider. We are always hosting them in here, and then of course you can attend them virtually as well. And of course, last but not least, if you have any questions, I'll be sticking around for a couple minutes. I still have that chat and the Q&A open online. And then if you could scan this QR code for me, because this actually is a survey on how today's workshop went, but there's a really nice section in the survey. It only takes a couple minutes that asks for what topics you might want to see covered in future student success workshops, which can really help me when I'm planning the roster for future semesters. So thank you guys so much for coming today. I hope that it was informative and helpful for you in some way. If you have any questions, again, I'm just going to stick around for a little bit, so feel free to ask them if you have any.